Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Science and Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Nowak. And as always, we have my co host, Ethan Vargas,
Hello.
and our amazing moderator, Mr. Og.
Well, just moderator.
With us, we have a couple of people. First, from the junior area of the Science Club, we have Peter George. How you doing, Peter?
Pretty good.
Sweet. And then also, a surprise guest today, we have my cousin, Miss Allison Nowak, who works as a food scientist.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, just like background and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now I am a food scientist, product developer, technology developer at a CPG company in the Chicago area. I've been with that company for almost 4 years now. And before that, I have a degree in agricultural and biological engineering and minored in food science. So focusing in science, engineering, food, kind of all over the place, but that's where I'm at.
Awesome. So today we have a couple of articles we're going to talk about. One kind of talking about the future of food packaging, specifically related to preserving food and increasing shelf life. And then we're also talking about the future of like bugs as a possible replacement for like meats and stuff. And then as a special bonus all the way at the end, me, Mr. Og, and maybe some of the juniors in the room are going to be indulging in some bug snacks, just some pre-roasted bugs. So make sure you stick around or follow the link in the description to that extra video, which hopefully will go up around the same time as this episode. So let's get started. We'll first I think talk about, unless anyone wants one to start with, I think talking about the food preservation could be interesting.
Right.
I guess I'll start with it. I think, it's talking about how, I guess when I've always heard about food preservation, the word that always came up for me was GMO, like trying to maybe artificially manipulate the genes of specific food to increase shelf life. But I feel like this company is kind of taking a different way with packaging. I found maybe that's a interesting conversation starter. Maybe Allison, if you have anything to talk about, maybe the difference between the future of maybe packaging versus GMOs.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I would say that typically right now in food in general, ways to preserve food are through ingredients. So preservatives, whether those preservatives be artificial ingredients or chemicals, or what we call natural preservatives, which are almost always exactly the same chemically as artificial preservatives, but are just made through more natural ways instead of through chemicals and reactions. They're made through fermentations or different organisms producing those preservatives. So that's one of the main methods of preservation. Otherwise, of course, processing and packaging. So there are a number of different processing methods that help with preservation. One great example is canning, right? So things are canned in clean cans and then heat processed for a certain amount of time so that inside that package, it becomes completely clean and preserved until it's opened. Otherwise, there are plenty of other ways to process food. If you're baking, if you're in this example, they're using a sous vide process. And in all of these, it's kind of a combination of package and process that make the preservation work. It's the process that kills everything off in the product and makes it safe, kills off all the microbes. But it's the packaging that is able to maintain what's in the package and keep it in the package and keep everything else out. And those things work together to work in preserving that over as long as that product will last.
Cool. Yeah, I know specifically in the article they talked, I remember the specific packaging was able to heat up the food or something, or keep it at a certain temperature to where it would prevent mold and different bacteria from forming. Maybe I don't know if you looked over the packaging. Is there anything like specifically in this that's like, what do you see as like more advanced, or that's like bring it to a different level compared to like maybe more traditional?
Yeah, it's actually it's interesting. Um, this it's not necessarily a new idea, but it's definitely being applied in a different way. Sous vide is not a new cooking technology. Typically, it's just used for cooking, but what they're doing at this company is using sous vide to completely process like these foods so that they're preserved. So anytime you're preserving something, it's you need to cook to a certain temperature over a certain period of time. And the time that you're processing um, changes based on the temperature. What they're doing here is processing at a lower temperature that's high enough
Oh,
to kill the microbes as long as you heat it for a certain amount
mm,
of time. So rather than heating it really high temperature, like with milk, for example, they'll heat some milk to a
yeah.
really high temperature, short amount of time, and then that's like ultra high temperature processing. And that does it quickly. What they're doing is, I think, around 140 degrees or even lower than that. So that because it's such a low temperature, they're not cooking the product, but they're killing off all the microbes that are present.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't really catch it, but that's it's really interesting. Ethan,
Yeah.
I know you brought up, yeah. Ethan, I know you brought up the article. Is there anything else specifically in this you wanted to talk about?
Sure. I thought it was really interesting that like after all the packaging, it's able to cook in like 2 minutes afterwards. And I thought that was really cool. And that's definitely a good thing in the future, especially with processed foods and the meat. And it like retains all its flavor and it's 100% safe um, during the time. So about 2 years, which is also really interesting. You can like preserve raw meat for 2 years or up to 2 years. I thought that was really cool and interesting for sure.
Yeah, I was also
Yeah.
I'm impressed by the packaging here. And of course, like all of this is, I'm assuming they didn't really have a lot of details in that article, but just
Mhm.
knowing what we know about sous vide and preservation, it's just kind of what you can try to piece it together. The packaging, although it being plastic packaging, I'm not sure what materials they're looking at, but that also plays a huge role in making sure it stays safe because you can't just use any plastic.
Yeah.
It has to have very specific um, functions and specific materials and types of chemicals in there so that it's able to keep oxygen out, able to keep whatever in the environment
Yeah.
away from that product to make it last over that 2 years, which is impressive.
Yeah. I think it's like trying to keep also like the plastic taste or whatever out of the food too. I think is probably gonna be important as well. I think even
Yeah.
just having like a water bottle. If you have a plastic water bottle, there's always like a taste of plastic in there. I can't imagine like what it would be like having like a 2 year meat inside of like a plastic bag would taste like. I feel like that's probably gonna be maybe like the next step or something. Maybe trying to get that.
Yeah, you never know. And I wonder what testing they've done so far, right? Like they're
Yeah.
claiming 2 years, but have they tested that 2 years?
Yeah.
Did they do the tastings and quality testing? Because that's really in a lot of cases, like the failure mechanism for shelf life is quality of the product. So
Yeah.
as they go through shelf life longer and longer, is the texture still good? Is the
Yeah.
taste still good? Or I mean, tech it looks like they're claiming that it's safe, but do you want to eat it after it's been
Yeah.
stored that long?
Yeah. That's a really good point.
So I want to jump in
It
here really quick since we brought up sort of those expiration dates a little bit, and I think you mentioned that normally those are just based on quality. Um, can you talk about that just a little bit, and what's going to happen to me if I eat something like the day after the expiration date? Am I doomed, or will I be okay?
Yeah, no, I would say in most cases you're probably okay. It's just like the quality might not be as good. I in my experience, at least, like I work with more processed goods so that it's um I don't work with products that expire from a perspective of raw meat, where if you have refrigerated raw meat, that's going to mold. You don't want to eat that. But if you have, for example, like a package of nuts, like if you eat those nuts after the expiration date, I wouldn't recommend it, just because you never know. It depends on the storage, but a day or two afterwards, it might impact like the flavor, because things with, like, for example, nuts have a high amount of fat, and that will oxidize and give a really rancid flavor when you're late in shelf life, that it won't taste as good if you have it after it's expired.
Cool. So I think that pretty much covers up the first article. I think I'd like to get started in the second one, which is about bugs. And are they the future of the food? Are we going to see bugs slowly replace meats?
No.
I guess that's where probably not. But
I hope not.
Yeah. I think it brought up an interesting point. Like, bugs are super nutritious, and also fun size. So it's but it's they carry a lot of proteins and a lot of like necessary stuff that we need, like in a almost like small little containers. So I don't know, I feel like I've always seen the competition maybe between like bugs and fish. I've seen that, like, because like fish is super easy to like reproduce and like get like a large amount in a small amount of time. I don't know if you could talk about that, maybe like the difference between like bugs and maybe like bugs and fish. I don't know, because that's only the two I've seen compared.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, like, bugs, of course, that it seems they're high in protein. They're probably pretty high in fiber, and would be a new sustainable source of protein in a climate and in an environment that we're in right now, where we need to start leaning towards other sources of protein. We don't have the agriculture on the planet to be able to support everyone eating getting all of their protein from meat. So I think in general, like with bugs, yeah, it's a great opportunity area, because this is untapped for agriculture right now. Like, if we were to do some kind of bug farming, like, can you do that underground? Can you do that in like a vertical environment rather than having it spanned across a plane? I think, and there's a lot of opportunities there if you can get past that fact that you're eating bugs. It looked like in the article, like there are some cultures that already do. So maybe that's an opportunity in those areas to kind of further employ that as a source of nutrition. But I don't think we'll ever get to a point, at least in Western culture, that we are comfortable eating bugs. Maybe I will be wrong in 20, 30 years and people will be comfortable eating bugs. But I think that it would probably be better for the industry and for people individually to simply lean a little bit away from meat sources into more plant sources. And I'm not saying eat an entire plant-based diet, but there are really good ways to help the environment by doing so, even if you're doing it for a couple of meals, and that helps with the growing population, and limited meat sources to feed that whole population. I honestly haven't heard much about fish, but it would make sense, right? Because we have so much water and we can't necessarily have like meat or plant agriculture there. So is there a way to sustainably do that? I know there are kind of some perhaps unsustainable ways that fish are currently being farmed, and I don't know a ton about that area, but maybe that would be also something of potential as a protein source in the future, as just eating more of it.
Okay.
The idea of going vertical is fascinating to me. I didn't even think about all of how that would revolutionize in terms of the space that we would need and all of the possibilities that would be available that currently aren't with our current approach to meat-based protein. So it sounds like there's an opportunity, gentlemen, ground floor, right? Kick the bug industry off. But I think, as we've all mentioned, the tough thing is going to be the sell. Does anyone have like a good slogan or a good pitch that you could convince people to eat bugs? Peter's sitting here shaking his head, and that's pretty much where I'm sitting. I'm like, I don't even know where we would start with this. Is there like, how would you even begin to convince people to eat bugs?
I'll lean into the Lion King and be like, slimy yet satisfying, and that's all you can start with.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Yeah. I guess I've always seen like, it's not like directly eating bugs, but I've seen like people use bugs in like chips and stuff, where they're using like a lot of the proteins in that and put them like in chips, where you still get like the proteins and stuff, but you're not, eating an actual bug. Do you see maybe like going in that direction? Whereas we don't really see people eating bugs, but maybe like that or like supplements made from bugs.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the most approachable if you're drying that out, if you're grinding it up into a powder that no one would recognize as a bug, unless they're looking at the label. I mean, of course, you don't want to mislead people and put bugs in their food without telling them, but bug flour is probably the direction that you might want to lean into there.
Yeah,
that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it would be really smart to like make supplements like you said, but also maybe they could like somehow normalize eating bugs. Like in the article, it mentioned how in the West, like in like American and the European culture, it's not really like looked upon as like satisfying. But like Allison said, that in other cultures, it's mentioned that they do eat bugs, maybe not regularly, but it's not like as like taboo or like disgusting. So maybe if they can like somehow normalize it or convince people it's not like not bad, I guess. But that would be hard in itself, convincing people to at least try it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I guess maybe like another thing, and maybe it'll probably change in the future, but when I had to buy like the bugs that we're about to eat eventually, it was not like as cheap as I thought it was going to be. It was like about $20 for like a small bag of like bugs. Is it like more, is there a process that makes these like more complicated to make more edible or safe compared to like meats or fish?
I imagine that the cost there is driven by the low demand, mostly because you don't have a lot of people wanting to eat bugs. So in order to get those bugs processed, it still costs money to cook them and to make them safe to eat. But because there isn't a normal agriculture for it right now, it's more difficult to get those bugs and to get enough of them to process and cook and to then package. And to make money off of that, they probably need to charge more just because the demand is so low.
Yeah.
I think the secret
I didn't
is, we were bringing up supplements. It made me think of the big like protein packs, right? I think the easy answer here is we just get The Rock on board. If The Rock will promote our bugs, like, listen, everybody loves The Rock.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's our in. So Dwayne, if you're listening to the podcast, right, hit us up.
Bug supplements.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, if they could like normalizing it, but like if they could get like a celebrity to go get behind it. And I was thinking of The Rock too, because everybody loves The Rock, like Mr. Og said. So that's definitely a good idea.
Yeah, make it a TikTok trend. Get people to start eating bugs.
Yeah,
that'll kickstart everything.
See, we're coming up with good ideas now.
Yeah, we're
really
getting
working.
somewhere.
We are.
I think we're getting near the end. Ethan, is there anything else you wanted to specifically address in the article?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered like every single topic, and we went pretty in depth. So I think we're good.
Yeah,
Mr. Og.
No, I think we can go ahead and finish up here. Again, to the listeners, we will be eating bugs, but we're gonna make it a bonus video here. So let us wrap up, and then we'll get all situated I'm gonna regret this.
Well,
Fun.
do
Enjoy
we
the
have
bugs, you guys.
yeah. Do we have any questions today, or science trivia? No science trivia. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you to our guest Allison for being a part of this podcast. We really appreciate it. And thank you to our Peter for saying and coming to our podcast again today. Make sure you tune in for the next episode where we talk about, I don't know, but probably something related to science and stuff. So thank you and bye-bye.